And hi, and welcome to XXY. My name is Blake More, and tonight I'll be speaking with the Sonoma County-based recording artist, producer, singer-songwriter Valentina O. We'll be discussing Valentina's evolution from professional opera singer to innovative folktronica art-pop artist Nymphya, her new CD Dream Dance, The Vocal Frontier, and so much more. But first, I want to play the title track from her new CD, Dream Dance. So that was Dream Dance. And before I bring Nymphya on to talk about Dream Dance and more, I'd like to provide a little bit of biographical context. Nymphya is a folktronica art-pop artist with suffusions of Worldbeat, opera, and avant-garde. In other words, where Lord meets Kate Bush at the Otherworld sorcereress soiree. Her alchemical art-pop style is a quirky collage of eclectic beats, soaring vocals, haunting soundscapes, and captivating samples, which kindle her insightful lyrics. Professional opera singer Valentina O is the eclectic and multifaceted artist behind Nymphya, who has appeared on The Tonight Show with John Cale of the Velvet Underground, opened for Todd Rundgren at the Fillmore Auditorium, and for George Vincent at the Villa Montalvo Winery, and made solo debuts with the San Francisco Opera, New York City Opera, and the San Francisco Symphony, just to name a few. With reviews from the press ranging from stunning, provocative, and consistently beautiful, golden mezzo, gorgeous voice and impressive acting, brilliance and emotional power. She's returning here with me on KZYX and Z's XXY to spend some time talking about her new incarnation as producer, recording artist, singer, songwriter on her brand new CD release, Dream Dance. Hello, Nymphya, and welcome to XXY.
Hi, Blake. How are you?
So good to hear your voice.
Yeah, you too.
We just heard Dream Dance, the title track on your new CD. You want to talk about what inspired that song?
I would love to. That song really came from reading a book called Color by an author named Rebecca Finlay. And I'm a painter, too. I love to paint. And so I was reading this book because it was talking about the evolution of color and throughout the entire world, what the root is of the main basic colors. So the first chapter is a chapter about the color ochre, which was in the Aboriginal, like in Papua New Guinea, is where ochre originated. So she traveled down to Papua New Guinea and spent a lot of time with the Aborigines. And in the course of that chapter, she started, of course, writing about the Aboriginal concept of dream time. And, you know, that just sparked my imagination. When I was aware of dream time before and how the Aborigines think about consciousness versus dream time and life versus death, but it struck a chord in me about that our lives are one big dream dance, this big dance of creation and procreation especially. And as artists, our procreation is really our art. For me, my songs. For a painter, they're paintings. For a writer, they're stories. And so I think all of us here are wanting to just create in our lifetime. So that's what the song Dream Dance is about this big, complicated dance that we all do, all humanity throughout time. And really the whole point of the dance is to connect with other people and to love and to create. And so that's what started that song, and it's towards the very beginning of the CD, like the third song in.
Oh, is that when you... So is the CD Dream Dance, is it as if you're telling a story or a dream? Is it this process of going through, going into the dream, coming out, going to the other side?
Yeah, it is. The whole CD is actually a concept CD where it actually didn't quite start out that way, but it just became that way as I started working on all the material. So the opening sequence, you hear a door, the sound of a door opening, and you're entering this glade, and you hear these beautiful strings and these footsteps of walking through this woods. And that ended up being kind of the act of incarnation when we incarnate and we become alive. And then the next song, Over the Hedge, is like this flying song where you're flying almost through the universe to land and then come into life and then do your dream dance, which is the third song. And then from there it goes through loss, because invariably being alive, you go through loss, right? And wandering through the wasteland of the loss and trying to orient yourself and the anger around that, and then acceptance and carrying on forward, and then spiraling upward to your next higher evolution of awareness and understanding and incarnation. Mm-hmm. So it became a concept CD in the end.
And so who are some of your primary musical influences?
You know, Kate Bush is probably my number one influence, especially for this particular CD. And I imagine you can't even help that. Like when you listen to someone and admire them so much as an artist, you kind of start being infused in their style and the way they think about music and the way they express themselves. So I would say she's my primary influence. And then when I put the music out in front of people, that was the first thing that they indicated when they listened to it. And that was so interesting to me because I thought, well, isn't that amazing? It's kind of just coming out of me. I didn't plan on it. I didn't try to force it to be that way. And then throughout my life, Christy Hind of the Pretenders, I played in rock bands when I was in college, and I love her strength. I love that she was an early rocker, a woman who just kicked butt, played guitar, and was just a badass. And she has a lot of strength. I really related to that. In high school, I was really drawn to Grace Slick and Jefferson Airplane and that whole San Francisco sound. Grace Slick's voice, her song "White Rabbit" was such a hugely influential piece of music. When I first heard that music, it was like my head exploded. I don't know how old I was. I was a teenager and I heard it and I was like, what is this? What is this sound? I have to know about this. I have to know what this woman is, what this music is. And then before then, the Bee Gees. I was obsessed with the Bee Gees. And what's so interesting to me is that also comes kind of oozing through here and there on this CD. The one song called Beautiful Wound, when I listened to it, I realized that the vocal arrangement is very Bee Gees-like. Again, I had no, as an artist yourself, you just kind of create, and then you look back and go, wow, look at that.
Yeah, and sometimes you're making people think of someone and you didn't even ever hear that person before. I remember the first time I performed and I had some people in the front row kind of disdaining me, like, oh, she's trying to be Laurie Anderson. And I had never seen Laurie Anderson before. So I took it as a high compliment once I found out who she was. I was like, right on. Thank you for insulting me in such a nice way. But, that's how you find these things out sometimes.
Laurie Anderson is incredible.
She's amazing, yeah. And I didn't know. I mean, I kind of came about so much of it the other from the back door and learned, I call myself sometimes a cultural savant or an idiot. There's so many things I missed during a period of time in my life. I just checked out of all the TV and movies and CDs. I just kind of went a different direction. So I'm catching up, though. I'm catching up. People like you help me.
I wouldn't think of you as being someone culturally illiterate, that's for sure.
Well, not just a certain segment of culture. Just a segment. Yeah. So talk about your songwriting and recording process. What are some of the ways that you go about making that? I mean, Dream Dance, it was so beautiful, and there's so much going on.
Yeah. Ideas usually just show up out of the blue. And I think any creative person would recognize that.
Right.
I mean, you're doing something randomly, and all of a sudden this idea is kind of like flying by. And what I've learned about that is I think the job of an artist actually is to be able to grab it in time before it disappears somewhere.
Oh, that is so true.
Yeah, and so first you have to start recognizing and noticing that. Like, wait a minute, I just had a bunch of ideas and I didn't grab them, and now I don't have them anymore.
They're gone.
You have to come up with a strategy. Okay, I don't want that to happen anymore. What am I going to do? So what I do is I have my mobile phone, and I'll sing stuff into it, or I'll take paper and I'll write it down really quickly at my notebook. I'll run to my notebook and write stuff down.
Okay.
So that's where the germ, it begins. And then I'll piece together an idea with lyric fragments. Like, for instance, on 4 of the songs on this CD, I asked a really good musician, friend, lyricist, singer-songwriter named GENTRY Bronson to write some lyrics for me. I had the idea of the lyrics and the concept, like Dream Dance is that. I came to him, I said, I want to write a song about this whole idea that we're living in this big, enormous dance that's a creative dream. And so I told him what I wanted, and he came back with these beautiful lyrics. So in that case, I would give him the idea, and then he would write the specific words. In my case, when I write the lyrics, usually I piece them together like a little puzzle. I come up with different lyrical fragments, and then if I know the melody, I'll write out the melody and how many spaces that need to be filled in that melody. I have 10 syllables, so now I'm going to find a lyric that has 10 syllables to fill that melody. So it's a big, big puzzle, And then when I get sparked for musical ideas, I'll just hear music around in the world around me, in a train going down the track, or in someone's voice on the television, or even another song on the radio, and all of a sudden it'll spark me to hear some other song in my head. And then I go and I record that into my phone. I love juxtaposing different sounds and unexpected sounds when I start putting my music together in the studio. So once I get my ideas flowing, I have my lyric fragments, I have my melody, I have my chord changes, I have my harmony. Then I sit down at the studio, and I usually start with a rhythm track, a drum loop or a drum track of some sort. It'll either be a loop that just works great out of the box, or I'll create one by piecing together different samples of a drum kit or different types of percussive sounds. And then I lay that loop in and start layering things over that, different sounds, different loops. I'll slice and dice them almost in a William Burroughs cut-up sort of a way. I'm sure you're familiar with that, right, as a poet?
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah, and it's almost like a collage in a sense where, I'm taking all these different musical elements and slicing them together and coming up with the arrangement of the song in the studio. And then once I have that structure, then I'll start laying in some of the melody and the harmonic fragments, the backing vocals, and, piecing the whole song together that way. And then I'll record the acoustic instruments over that if I have an acoustic guitar or acoustic percussion. So it's this giant puzzle. And I think that's why I love it so much, because it's like your whole brain is being utilized. You have your creative side and you have your analytical, logical side. And it's everything's being, all the cylinders are firing at once to piece together this puzzle.
Do you teach musical creation?
I don't.
It's fascinating just hearing the way you broke it down. You do so very clearly, just the going through the steps and how you go about it. I can only imagine how wonderful it must be to think in music in that sense. I'm so verbal and picture. Everything is words and images. And I love to dance so I can think with my body, but I haven't quite translated that into my head in that way. And you just described it, and it sounds, I'm envious. I want to do that.
It is pretty fun, I have to tell you. I mean, when I'm in the studio, it is absolutely one of those examples where 10 hours can go by and, you have no idea, except for the fact that, God, why am I so hungry?
Right. Why does my back hurt, or my feet are asleep? I didn't even realize my feet were asleep for 20 minutes. I get that. I definitely find myself in wormholes of creativity that go on for, they can go on for weeks and months if I'm really into something. And I think that's what made me a poet, is that you can, sit down and relatively accomplish it versus, I'm such a neurotic creator that if I'm doing a mural that might take me 3 weeks, I'll do 18-hour days just to be done, because I can't do anything else. My brain won't let me. I'm too excited. Do you do that when you create?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's an upside and a downside of having a studio in your own home, which is something I've wanted to do for a long time. Obviously, the upside is you don't have to, spend tons of money and dollars pouring it into studio time. But the downside is you can tinker and tinker, tinker, and tinker until it's like, oh my God, you got to stop. You got to know when to stop, you know?
And even then you might not stop.
Even then you might not stop. Yes. I am absolutely 100% guilty of that because it's just so fascinating. I mean, I also, as I said, I love to paint, right? So to me, being in the studio is like painting with sound.
Right.
You know, you're in all of these different textures and creating a picture or a feeling or a sonic movie in a way. And that's what I think I love the most about it, is this idea of sound.
Right. Well, let's play Beautiful Wound, and this is an excerpt, right? And do you want to say anything about it before we share it?
Yeah, I would love to. So Beautiful Wound is one of 3 songs on this CD that was written for Keith Keller, who was, you knew him.
Oh, yes.
He was, an incredible, extraordinary human being. And
I just got goosebumps. That's how extraordinary. Yes.
Yeah, he really is. He's extraordinary. And he was my fiancé and a record producer in New Orleans. And he died very unexpectedly in 2006. And I was really thrown into the depths of grief because we were in love. I mean, it's like one of the worst things you could ever experience is losing somebody like that. This song, Beautiful Wound, is about him because the phrase Beautiful Wound came to me as one of those ideas kind of floating through, and I was like, wow, Beautiful Wound, that's an amazing phrase. Let me grab that. And I realized that's what Keith was for me, because even though it was horrifying and extraordinarily wrenching and, you know, in some ways you feel like your whole life is ruined, there was so much beauty in that wound. There was so much gift in that. I learned so much from that, and I carved out my soul to this really deep level that would have never happened if that didn't happen.
Right.
And so that's what the song is about. It's about those things that happen to you that are considered to be terrible, but they're actually really beautiful. And so I was looking for phrases like things that are supposed to be bad but actually bring beauty, like the rainstorm that paints the sun's rays. You know, rain is like, oh, it's raining. But then if it's raining and the sun is out, you get this beautiful rainbow, you know? Mm-hmm. You don't get that rainbow without the rain, for example. Yes. Or like a grain of sand that I carry in my shell, which is, you know, how pearls are made. Right. Right? Right. It's like, ooh, get this thing out of here. So that's what the song is about. And this is just the very opening.
Okay. So this is just the opening.
Unexpected special delivery, careening down cobblestone passageways, twisting our fate this way, that way, always, always. What if we had known that you were my beautiful wound? What if we had known that you were my beautiful wound? Annihilation, special delivery, smashed up against immovable palisades.
Okay, wow. I want to remind listeners that you're listening to XXY, and I'm your host, Blake More, and I'm speaking with Nymphya, and that was Beautiful Wound, an excerpt. I really want to hear that whole song. Wow.
That's good.
Right?
I also want to say to our listeners out in Radio Land that we're doing a Facebook Live right now. We're going in and out on the Facebook Live due to weird signal, but we've just been joined by Gentry Bronson, our Facebook Live. He's joined us, and he was the lyricist I mentioned to you guys earlier about on Dream Dance. So, hi, Gentry. It's great to have you here.
Hi, Gentry. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, he's a really gifted lyricist and a great singer-songwriter in his own right. You should check him out at GENTRYBRONSON.com. Some great stuff.
Wonderful. So, I'm curious. I want to ask a bunch of questions about Facebook Live, but I really want to focus on, so what is listening? I mean, right now, like I heard that song and like, yes, I know Keith and but beyond that, the quality of your voice, the way everything came in, what does listening to your music do for listeners when they hear it? Like, what do they hear? What do they feel?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, I've had some really beautiful, amazing things said by some of my Facebook fans about that. You know, one of them said, your music is like a rainbow in the dark. And I just thought, oh my God, that is so beautiful. I mean, I was like, you should be writing lyrics.
That's so true.
Right? That's a beautiful thing. And I think because again, going back to what and I forgot to mention that I've been very influenced by my studies of Western mysticism and psychology and mythology, and things like that can't help but seep through who and what you are, is what I've learned. So when you put on my music, and especially if you listen from start to finish the whole CD, it really ends up being this journey from incarnation to birth to pain and loss and suffering to anger, acceptance, and then redemption. And so you literally are going through this whole journey, and there are elements of it that are very like you're in a dream. So, and it can really take you away. And the other thing that it gives people that they've mentioned is it makes them very thoughtful and gives them some deep insight into lives. There's nothing that makes me happier than to hear that, because that was exactly why I started out on this path in the first place. When I was 16 years old, and I listened to Heart, which is another one of the bands I love. I listened to Dog and Butterfly, and I was having this revelation about life and about myself while I was listening to that song. And I thought, I want to do this for other people. That's what I want to do. And I think that's what people get when they listen to my music.
Oh, I definitely feel that way. There's such a power there and a combination. And I've heard you through different incarnations of your voice, and what I'm hearing right now really moves me.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. So you've got Howl and Wasteland, and you're talking about that connection there. Do you want me to just play those two?
Well, before we do, I want to say something about Howl. Actually,
yes, and both, please.
Yeah. Howl, so this CD has different soundscapes that come on between some of the songs, because I was telling someone the other day, God, I would love to be a Foley artist. It's so fun, right?
Right.
Sound. It's all about painting sound for me. And so I have these soundscapes that are woven between some of the songs. Howl is one of those. And Howl was inspired by Verdi, who is the famous opera composer, because as you know, as you mentioned before, I sing opera too. In one of Verdi's operas called Rigoletto, which is a masterpiece, in the third act, the final act, whatever number act it is, there is a scene where there's a storm. And in that storm scene, he does this effect with the men's choral voices that is so stunning. I have goosebumps right now just thinking about it. It's so stunning, where they're just like doing these oohs, and they sound like the howls of the wind over the orchestra. And so you get the sense that it's the storm conjuring on the stage. And that's always followed me around. I've done that opera a number of times, and I always love that moment. So that was my inspiration for Howl, was I wove my voice doing those types of the sound of wind howling through the sound of the wind. And it leads into this song called Wasteland, because you're walking. This is after you've had your loss, and
right.
You're walking through the wasteland of nowhere. You're lost. And these are, again, beautiful lyrics written by Gentry. I came to him and said, hey, I want to write this song about this. And he came back with these gorgeous lyrics, and then I, set them to music. The song Wasteland actually ends up being 8 minutes long, which, again, I didn't expect that, but it opens up into this big development section and then comes back at the end, and it's about that journey when you are in your wasteland of despair.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So I will...
Wonderful.
I will play them. But yeah, wonderful Wasteland. Well, I mean, I think we all relate. There's so much going on in our lives and our planet right now. So in some sense, if you have any bodhisattva in you, it's hard to just life is beautiful, and there's real stuff happening. So let's meet some of that.
I'm walking in the wasteland, head hung down. Heaven won't come, winds bring the buzzards around. My boots are covered in mud from the desert rain. Now it's all dried up, water nowhere to drink. Looking for you now, where the sun dies low. I don't wanna find what always steals my soul.
So that last one was Wasteland, and how was the first, and you kind of brought them together?
Yeah, as I said, there's these different soundscapes that weave throughout the whole CD. So that one leads right into Wasteland.
Okay.
And
so right now I am looking at this gorgeous CD cover, and there's a photograph of you, and it's very dreamlike in the colors, and I'm assuming, how did you come up with the artwork, and what's the evolution of this image? That I assume if they went to that Facebook page, Nymphya, that image is there. Is that correct?
They can also go directly to my website, which is www.nymphya.com. And on the website, they'll see the album, which is actually ready for pre-order. You can download a digital download only, ready for pre-order, and you go to nymphya.com/store, and it's there right now. And you can take a look at the cover. You can look at the list of songs. There are the excerpts of the songs that are on the site, so you can check out, all the songs that are on the CD. And then we're going to be releasing an LP and a CD, physical merchandise, and those will be ready. They're not available for pre-order, but they are ready once the CD releases, which is going to be about weeks from now.
Mm-hmm. So
the artwork, yeah. So go about to answer your question. I ended up finding this incredible photographer named Kirsten Litter, and He totally understood what I was about, what I wanted to convey. And we ended up taking these beautiful pictures, and I can't remember, I think it was over, after we took the pictures, we were having like a glass of wine and talking about, okay, how do we want to work this with the cover? And between the two of us, we had this idea of, hey, what if we have you just sitting underwater? And all of a sudden, it was one of those, yes, because, again, going back to my whole thing about studying mythology and philosophy and Western mysteries, water represents the unconscious and our emotional, space. So that's where everything springs from. That's where all of our creativity comes from. That's where our inspiration comes from. And that made perfect sense to me to have that as the cover of Dream Dance, because that's also the realm of dreams.
Right.
So on the cover, we have this beautiful picture of me underwater, and then on the back of the CD, you'll see a forest with a path, and I'm kneeling in front of this puddle, and in the puddle, you can see the version of me that's underwater. And so what that is, that's like the imagery of, even when you're in you're lost, you can always find that entry point to the place where you are connected. You're not as lost as you think you are, because you always have that connection to your inner self.
Right.
Yeah.
That reflection, if you choose to stop, still, look in, is always there waiting for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. And this image, you've got flowers out of your hair, and it's as if you're sitting on some sort of a throne underwater, and your posture, everything about it is, and I can, I didn't quite initially get that you're underwater, but the way your hair's moving, you get the movement. It's a remarkable photograph. And I'm assuming that then did you do the digital enhancements of the photo, or did somebody else, or?
My photographer did.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah. She put in the underwater plants and the bubbles and the sunlight coming through the sparkling water at the top. Yeah, when I saw it, I was just, oh my God, that's it. I mean, I was completely blown away by her work. She was phenomenal.
And were you actually fully dressed like that underwater?
I was just dressed like that in the air.
Oh, you were in the air, and then she put you in the water.
She put me in the water.
Right, so you were in the air, so that's where you get the movement, like your hair is moving in the water. Oh, it's amazing. What's possible now is so incredible. So, question. Again, I want to let our listeners know that this is XXY, and you're listening to Nymphya Talk. I'm Blake More, and I'm curious, where did Nymphya, how was she born?
That also goes back to Keith Keller. He was one of those people that was brilliant and wise, well-read, and had this wide-ranging mind that just retained so much of what he learned. So I also accordingly learned a lot from him because of just this wealth of information that he had. So one of the things that he was really familiar with that I wasn't at that time was Greek mythology. And one day he said, he looked at me and he said, you're a wood nymph. And I said, oh, what exactly is a wood nymph? And he said, the mythological demigod Greek creatures that prance through the woods, and they remind people of what it is to be alive and the joy of life and the sensual pleasures of life, and they remind people of that part of themselves, and that's just who you are. And when he said that, I had that moment of recognition of, oh my God, he's right. That's exactly who I am. And also this feeling of really being seen.
Right.
Like, that feeling with people where you just get it, that they get you.
Right. Most definitely.
And that was one of those watershed moments in my life of, that is my, almost like a core identity for me. And that's why I decided to make that my artist name. Because, again, it's all about, this endeavor is about bringing from inside yourself outside to the world your perspective on what it is to be alive.
Right.
So what better place to do that from than the core of who you actually are?
Has she come out to perform before? Or is this her debut as a performance scope?
Yeah, no, this is Nymphya is a brand new incarnation of my art-pop recording artist persona, which honestly is what I've planned on doing the whole time.
Right.
But I got distracted along the way taking voice lessons. I was playing in rock clubs in Philadelphia, and I started taking voice lessons, and I was introduced to this incredible world of classical music, and it kind of turned my head, and I was like, wow, this is interesting and amazing. So I followed that path and started singing opera and performing in theater companies, and, down the road, I turned back around and said, no, wait, what was I doing again? Oh, yeah.
And do you still do opera?
Yeah, I still do opera. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I have the opportunity to perform at this incredible event called Bracebridge, which happens every year in Yosemite. It's been going on for 75 years, 72 years, something ridiculously long. And it's this beautiful pageant of a Christmas meal at this enormous estate of the Squire of Bracebridge, and I play his cousin Molly Mackay from the Scottish Highlands, and it's music and dance and story all interwoven with a 4-hour, 5-course meal. It's superb. And all the singers are from, are opera singers. Some sing with San Francisco Opera. We all sing at different companies throughout the Bay Area. Yeah, it's a spectacular thing.
And that goes on all through, like, from Thanksgiving almost to Christmas, right?
It's actually just in December.
Just in December. Yeah. But for 3 weeks, and you live there in Yosemite, and is it a nightly performance?
Yeah, they. I think there's about 7 performances over the 2 weeks that we're there of the show, and then we have concerts on the opposite days. So it's really an immersion in Yosemite nature and music and joy and friendship. It's really lovely.
Yeah, sounds very festive as well.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm curious. So let's say longtime fans who've watched and encountered your evolution through all these different steps. What's their response to Nymphya?
So far, it's been all enthusiasm. Like, oh my God, this is great. I'm so glad you're doing this. Keep doing this. I'm so excited. Yeah, I've had nothing but enthusiasm. Yeah,
and that makes sense. And, this being the XXY, we're kind of talking about gender and feminism, and one of the things that when we first met, I realized we had in common is that kind of willingness to embody and to rock our inner drag queens, as females, like, hey, this is the whole deal right here. And, every time I see anything you do or the way you present is so full and so beautiful and so alive and fearless. Have you always been like that?
Well, first of all, thank you for that.
Yeah, it's true.
I don't think I've always been like that. I remember very early on being extremely shy as a little girl, and I had an experience where there was a daytime TV show, and the host was named Malcolm. This was in Dayton, Ohio, when I was growing up. And he was very handsome. I mean, I was like 7, right? So I thought he was handsome. And so I was in love with him. And he was going to be at a local strip mall. So I was like, I got to meet him. I got to meet Malcolm. So I went to meet Malcolm, and I remember I had my favorite sneakers on. There were these red sneakers, and I loved them so much that I wore a hole through the toe. And so... But I loved my red sneakers, so I wore them anyway. But as I got in line and I was moving up to meet Malcolm, all of a sudden I became really ashamed of my holy sneakers. And I just thought, he's going to hate my holy sneakers. And I became really embarrassed and shy and just literally full of shame. I mean, it was my own head trip, obviously, right?
Right.
And he was fine, but it was my own thing in my head. And after that, I was disappointed in myself because I wasn't as friendly and outgoing with him because I was all of a sudden feeling shame. And I realized right then, you know what? I'm just gonna pretend like I'm not ashamed. I'm gonna pretend like I'm outgoing, and I'm gonna pretend like I'm not shy, and I'm just gonna see what happens. And in the pretending of that, I think I slowly became that.
Right. Right. The willingness to get over it, so to speak, it became a real identity. You just became authentic. Right.
In it's basically the fake it till you make it thing.
Right. Right.
But I definitely was shy. I mean, I remember thinking of myself as shy as a little kid. But then I did break out of it. And I will say that as I got older, like through high school into college, I would say probably people would consider me to be self-expressed, to use a euphemism.
Yes. and curious, in terms of the music world, you know, you as a female producer, you're doing all of this yourself. Have you noticed, you know, that ceiling in your work as you've been in the music business for decades?
When you say that feeling,
the ceiling, being a female, you know, there's the kind of the idea, the ceiling that you can really only achieve so far or be perceived to a certain degree that still exists. I know friends in the music business say that it's still very much a male world. And so just curious ways you've encountered that and solutions you've come up with.
You know, in the music world that I've been circulating in from on the opera and the theater part, I think it's a little less pronounced because you're hired, you know, unfortunately, they need women because there's women's roles in this thing, right?
There's now actually women playing women in opera.
Right, exactly. So, all right, we have to hire a woman, okay. And in opera, as long as you sing well, they're happy.
Right.
And you're right, yeah, we play, especially as a mezzo-soprano, you play male parts. Sometimes you're playing pants roles.
Uh-huh.
So there's a little gender bending there. I think it's a little bit more difficult in the pop world because they expect women to have a little bit of a pop-tartish kind of presence. And that was one of the things I loved about Chrissie Hynde, for instance, was that she had none of that stuff. She was just Chrissie Hynde, and she told it like it was, and she didn't play into that card. So I would say the biggest thing that I've seen is there's always a little tinge of that. Is, you know, how attractive are you? How sexy are you?
Right.
And that women still kind of not need to, but often will play that card.
Yeah, especially like you said in the pop world, there's different musical genres where it's not as necessary. But if you're going for that, I mean, now with so much of with the pitch corrector and all the different things, and you notice so many women sound the same when they sing, and in some ways it feels like it is so produced in the studio where it's more about what someone she looks this way, let's just market this and you know, turn her into a singer, rather whether she's really a singer or not, you know. And I would imagine, you know, that's something you've seen for a long time, and you know, you embody such a beauty that's an inner beauty and a strong feminine power. So, you know, that's that true artist, which, like you said, like a Kate Bush or, you know.
Yeah, and those were always the ones that I was drawn to. Yeah. The women that had more than just a Pop-Tart thing going on.
Exactly. I like that word.
I will say from the production side, I do think there can be a little bit of sexism, but honestly, I think people have gotten way better now than it used to be. I really, really do. I feel there's a lot of respect for anyone, regardless of who they are, taking on an artistic challenge and going for it. Yeah. I just feel like people respect that across the board these days.
Good to hear.
That's what it feels like to me, yeah.
Yeah, okay, we're getting close to our time, so we have another excerpt. This one's Going Home. You want to talk about this one?
Yeah, this one is towards the end of the CD, and this is the acceptance stage of the loss. This song is also written about Keith, and you know, where I live, which is Petaluma in Sonoma County, there's a big alt-country Americana roots music scene here.
Mm-hmm, most definitely.
And so, and I wanted to have something on the CD that represented where I live.
Okay.
And Keith was also a roots guy. He did a lot of blues records and brass band records from New Orleans and old rocker type stuff. And this song, I wanted to be part, that roots, I wanted to capture that roots essence of his.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of an alt country tune, and
Okay.
it's in 3/4, and I wanted to evoke that kind of faded sepia tone feeling of the end of summer.
Mm-hmm. Great.
But understanding that that's just the way it is. And so this song is called Goin Home, and at the end of it, you'll hear it kind of disappears into the bardo, because that's where he went.
And this is also an excerpt. This is not the whole song.
This is also an excerpt. And before this song is another one of those interludes, and in that interlude, I found these incredible sounds of digitized light from the Kepler star that NASA turned into sound, and recordings of a chorus of radio waves that are in the Earth's magnetosphere that are released by energy particles. And so I created a soundscape mixing in those sounds, and that's called Liftoff, and it's really about, you're leaving the planet, you're going back home.
All right, here we go.
There's your suitcase, busted and taped, sitting there dusty by the gate, and you're standing in the shadow it makes. Watch as you turn your gaze and try to step back through shifting summer haze. Like a shroud on a grave, you're going home. You're going home. You're going
All right. You're going home.
You're going home.
Yeah. That's beautiful. So you definitely have some sustain happening there, girlfriend.
You mean sustain?
You hit a note and hold it. I don't know, it's probably not the right word for it, but it moves me. So we are running out of time, and I want to just make sure that people know how to find you. I know we talked about your Facebook page, and I know we talked about how Dream Dance is available for pre-order at Nymphya, NYMPHYA.com. And you're also going to be at Dragon's Breath Theater up in Anchor Bay, California, Saturday, September 9th. The show starts at 6 o'clock, and you're going to be doing a couple songs from your CD there. You also have a website?
Yeah,
and that's
Nymphya.com.
And you can also get free downloads there. And I want to make sure I give us enough time. So just thank you. I want to play your last excerpt when we go out. And so any last quick words you want to say to the listening audience, Miss Nymphya?
This last excerpt is Over the Hedge, and this is the one that actually starts the CD that's kind of this feeling of flying. And I hope you enjoy the music, and I love talking about this creative process. So thank you for listening, and thank you for having me, Blake.
It's been such a pleasure. You're listening to XXY, and I'm your host, Blake More, and I've been talking with Sonoma County-based recording artist, producer, singer, songwriter, Nymphya, about her musical journey. And when you tune into XXY next Thursday, September 7th, I will be on the air as well, interviewing visionary poet Susan Woolridge, author of the best-selling book Poem Crazy and many others. Up next is going to be Pulse of the Planet, followed by the ever-enthralling Treehouse with W. Dan. So here is the last track right here, Over the Hedge, and here we go.